Hey guys, you know, I don't think it's any secret that when we got to the last episode, the last problem, especially towards the end, a lot of things were open to interpretation. Some were somewhat officially canonized, if not fully canonized, but mostly open to interpretation. Two things that really stood out to a lot of people that were opened or left to interpretation. Even Blank Reacts brought this up during his summary of the last problem. That even though it's pretty much implied that something happened or something's going on, that the creative staff left it open to interpretation for fans to kind of think about themselves and speculate and theorize on. It's easy for me to say, and I am doing this uncut and unscripted. But with that said, there was one ship that pretty much had been a mainstay since the beginning, and in the recent seasons has been touched upon, and that's of course Spike and Rarity. Now, to be honest, it isn't clearly fully said that these two ended up together. But if you take a look at the last problem, you take a look at the Magic of Friendship Grows song, or the song The Magic of Friendship Grows. During the visit into Ponyville, the first group shot we see is of all of them together and Rarity right next to Spike, looking up at Twilight, and then quickly changing her gaze upwards towards Spike, kind of batting her eyes a little bit, but you could tell she's looking at him a lot longer. Then, when you get towards the end of the song, she's right next to him. Somebody pointed out over at DeviantArt that she actually had to come up from behind him just to stand between him and Twilight. But mostly, the reason the person at DeviantArt pointed that out was because she seemed to be close by to him. She seemed to be standing next to him for a majority of this song, especially at the end. And a lot of people have brought up the fact that it's kind of ironic that even though it's not implied that anything happened, that both Rarity and Spike are next to each other throughout certain parts of that song. Like I said, the first group shot when they go to Ponyville, and then the last group shot. But nothing's really implied, or is it? You see, one of the things about the ending of Dragon Dropped that supervising director Jim Miller pointed out was it's open to interpretation. You can interpretate that ending any way you want. So when one thinks about it with Spike and Rarity, one has to think, did they get together somehow, some way, between the ending of the end, between the coronation, if you will, and the future that takes place in the Timeskip? Did they find a way to get together? That is a good question. And a lot of fans all over the place, not just at various My Little Pony Friendship is Magic sites, forums, you name it, or even places like DeviantArt. Fans have basically come out and have acknowledged that, hey, Spike and Rarity did end up together. One fan has one picture, and if I can find it, I'll post it up here, of Spike and Rarity together, Rarity in Spike's arms, and they're kissing. And the title says, Always. Another one is with them looking at each other, and it's called The End. See, a lot of fans by doing this, a lot of fans are interpreting the fact that Spike and Rarity did find a way to get together, but one can assume that their relationship is the kind of relationship that you see, let's say, with, star athletes. Star athletes during seasons are away from their family a majority of the time unless there's a certain break, like the All-Star break, the off-season break, stuff like that, if they don't make the playoffs. So one could assume that Rarity and Spike's relationship's kind of in that situation. Now, as a wrestling fan, there are real-life wrestling couples that work for different companies. A good example would be NXT's Adam Cole and his wife, fiancée, Britt Baker. These two work for two different different, entirely different organizations. Like I said, Adam Cole is with WWE through the NXT brand. Britt Baker is part of AEW, All Elite Wrestling. And ironically, like tonight, they're competing against each other for the separate brands, or to help the separate brands and companies succeed. But they do find a way to get together and be with each other. So when one thinks about it, Rarity and Spike could be looked at in that category between the Coronation, or after the Coronation, and the time skip that we get in the future with the Last Problem. That they have a relationship to where every now and then they get together. They find time to spend with each other. They find ways to spend time with each other, get together, maybe go out, have a nice dinner, look at the stars, go to a show, stuff like that, without it being about how they rule in Equestria or how things are going with certain parts of Equestria that they're looking after. And one would have to think possibly that's one way of looking at it. That's how the relationship came to be. Because you got to ask yourself one question. You got to ask yourself one specific question. If they weren't planning to do something with Spike and Rarity, then why did Nicole Dubuque in Season 8 decide to kind of okay the idea of putting more focus back on the whole Sparity relationship? With Spike bringing up Rarity and his Hearts and Hoofs Valentine's Day a poem with a heart-shaped card and everything he was going to give to her. Why have him read it off to Discord to give Discord an example of what love is about, or how romance is about? Why focus one of the character arcs in Best Gift Ever on Spike trying to find that perfect best gift ever for Rarity and wanting to be Rarity's heartwarming helper, and have him sing his portion of the True Gift of Giving song, as I've mentioned before many times, in a serenade romantic way? Why do that if you weren't planning to do something with these characters? Why even go as far as to have Rarity be the only one out of the group in the Season 9, in the mid-season finale for this final season? And what was the title again? I can't even think of the title. Basically the one where Celestia and Luna go on vacation. I know I can't think of the title right now. You guys will probably let me know in the comment section. But basically, Rarity's the only one out of the group after Spike gets caught up in a tree by a big giant tortoise. She's the only one to run out towards Spike in concern. And then, of course, you have Dragon dropped, and the way that ended, and kind of was implied throughout of what kind of story arc it was between the two. I mean, hey, Thespio, in his review at Voice of Reason, basically stated that this was more along the lines of the equivalent of a love triangle. That basically Rarity's reaction to Spike spending time with Gabby was the equivalent of her finding out that Spike was cheating on her. You see what I'm saying? And then you have the ending where Spike says even though him and Gabby had a good time on her routes, him helping her out and all that, he'll always want his Rarity time, and he's holding Rarity's hoof in his hand. And then Pinky's little line at the end, kind of insinuating something right then and there. Point is, and again I'm doing this unscripted and on the fly, the point is, one has to open the book to interpretation and think that between the Coronation, after the Coronation, and the time skip that we got, that somehow these two have gotten together. The only reason again, one could say that they didn't show up together like, let's say, Applejack and Rainbow Dash did, implying that they got together, is because of the fact that they came from different parts of Equestria. Spike came from a conference or something like that, from a summit or whatever he came from by trying to keep peace between Capper's people and the Diamond Dogs, the Simians and the Diamond Dogs. And Rarity was coming from Yakistan. See what I'm saying? Very similar to the examples I gave you earlier, that maybe it's a relationship to where they have an understanding that once they get together, they'll try to get together when there's nothing really going on, And there you go. And in a sense, by interpreting it in that manner, interpreting it in that manner, is very relatable to real life, especially from a political, athletic, standpoint. Because, like I said, you have political people, you have ambassadors, and so all those kind of people that have to spend time away from their loved ones, especially those that they're in love with or engaged with or in a relationship with. And again, great examples are athletes in sports and even wrestlers that work for different companies and travel different schedules. They basically work it out to where when they get the time to be with each other, that's fine. That's great. But there are various times they won't be. And they have an understanding of that. And that's how I view Spike and Rarity's relationship. That's how I interpret, perhaps, that between the Coronation and the Timeskip in the last problem, they found a way to get together, but it's a relationship that's based in a mutual understanding, ending that, hey, we can get together, we can be with each other, we could do this, we could do that, but only when we find the time. And I like that. And I like interpreting it in that manner, because again, it brings a bit of realism to that point, that these two have possibly become more than just friends now in between Coronation and the Timeskip, but it's a relationship that's mainly based around the fact that they'll find ways to get together with each other. They'll find opportunities to get together with each other. I mean, the fact that you have Yona and Sambar running Rarity's boutique in Ponyville is a good example of her finding ways to not only still run her business, but if she's in a relationship with someone like Spike, finding ways to spend time with him. And him being, the friendship ambassador, and him acknowledging it's a full-time job. Yes, it is, but that doesn't mean he can't find time to spend with his friends, especially the ones he really loves. So I look at it from that perspective. I look at the interpretation that the whole situation opens, and the fact that fans are going with this themselves, that they are indeed together, but it's a relationship that's based in understanding, an understanding relationship that means that's basically along the lines of, hey, I'm doing this, we both got separate jobs we're a part of, so we'll be together, we're gonna be together, but we have to work it out and find ways of how we're going to be together. So that's the way I look at it. That's how I interpret Spike and Rarity's relationship, in the show. And especially when it comes between the Coronation and the Timeskip. That's how I interpret it. And again, like Jim Miller and others have said, situations like that, Applejack and Rainbow Dash, even Fluttershy and Discord, Twilight's possible immortality or not immortality, it's all open to interpretation. It really is. And I appreciate that. And fans, obviously, at places like DeviantArt and various MLP forums and message boards and sites, feel the same way. So anyway, I just thought I'd come on here and kind of get that off my chest a little bit, kind of talk about how I see Spike and Rarity's relationship working and how it developed between the Coronation and the Timeskip, and how one, from almost a real life standpoint, can interpret how it works. So that's all I'm going to really say, guys. Let me know what you all think down below. Let me know if you agree with what I had to say, and I will talk to y'all later.